Hi, did you know that gifted students are not beings from another world? They do have some traits that set them apart. These are them. Gifted students may have many of the following traits. They can have intellectual curiosity, for sure, rapid learning, advanced vocabulary, critical thinking, creativity, high sensitive, they are perfectionist, intense focus, independence, advanced sense of humor, asynchronous development, meaning they don't learn at the same pace that the other people do. They have high energy levels and they have strong interest. They are also very aware about social issues in general, and they may show most of the time leadership qualities. What about the history of gifted education? We are going to talk about history in the United States, since this is where we are. Let's start with the early 20th century. At the very beginning of the 20th century, the United States created schools for accelerated classes for students and even to skip some classes. Then let's jump up to the 50s and 60s. The association for the gifted was created. I believe it is called the National Association for Gifted Children. In the 70s and 80s, what happened? There was federal legislation, including education for all handicapped children in 1975, and that mandated educational services for all children, including those with exceptional abilities. In the 1920s and the 2000s, the Jacob K. Javits Gifted and Talented Students Education Act was passed in 1998, providing federal funding for research, demonstration projects, and innovative methods related to gifted education. The focus shifted towards inclusivity, recognizing giftedness in various cultural, ethnic, and socio-economical groups. And then lately in the 2000s and to the present, there have been some advancements in the neuroeducation and psychology, meaning that they are taking into account the psychology of the students and the development of the brain, which is very, very relevant. The social and emotional needs of the gifted students, you ask. Well, we can list them up in the following order. It doesn't really matter. The first one can be personal peer relationships. The gifted students have problems finding other peers who are at the same level emotionally or intellectually. It's always going to be those two aspects of the gifted. They have emotional intensity. Everything is so strong. Every feeling is very strong when it goes through their brains. So they have high emotions a lot of the time. Perfectionism, of course, perfectionism can be a good thing unless brings anxiety and stress because your standards are set too high. So that can be problematic, especially among gifted students. Asynchronous development, again, we go back to emotions and intellectual development. They might be faster intellectually, but emotionally can be lagging, can be falling behind. So that's a problem. Uh, Empathy and sensitivity, it goes back to the emotions. They are very empathetic with issues and problems that others may have, and they might not feel the world is giving back to them the way they are sensitive and emotionally involved as they are. Identity and self-concept is hard for them to identify themselves with others because they might think and not look, but think differently or look at things differently. Self-concept, if you are a perfectionist, you are never going to find the point where everything is good enough. So that can affect the self-concept and your security and self-confidence. Social skills, many times you find students who don't really connect with their peers and society in general because they don't find those bridges to connect, which is normally the social and the intellectual again. So that's a brief description of the social and emotional needs of the gifted. At least that's what I learned. Are there special populations of the gifted? The answer is yes, there are several. But let's talk about some of the most important or relevant, although they are all important. The first one could be the twice exceptional. So these are the kids who are gifted, but they also may have a disability. Let's say Asperger's, autism, dyslexia, or ADD. So they are twice exceptional. There are two things that we need to take into account to provide best for them. The culturally diverse gifted students, so they are gifted, but their cultural code is not the same, so that may turn into a disability. Economically disadvantaged, we all understand that. If a student comes from a low-income family, may not have the same resources or opportunities to improve and to develop more their abilities. The ELL, or English language learner, they also may find a disability because of the language barrier. Not being able to understand the language in which they are learning can be obviously complicated. So these are some of the most important special populations in the gifted. Why should you, human teachers, be familiar with giftedness? Well, first of all, to provide the best service we can provide to the students. I can list and name some aspects. The first one is early identification. It's very, very important to identify the students, and many gifted students unfortunately fall in the cracks and they don't get the services that they should be getting. Differentiated instruction, although I feel like this is rhetorical. People talk about that in the system of education all the time in this planet, but differentiation is very, very, very difficult. And it's not the teacher's fault, really. It's just the way the system is. We are supposed to provide the same standardized test. We don't have the time. Our classes numbers are bigger every single day. The ratio student-teacher is always high. I mean, we do whatever we can to try, right? But that should be an important part of knowing why giftedness exists in your classrooms. Also, preventing underachievement. If you know what you're doing, you know what you're teaching, it should be improved. Supporting emotional needs. We all know that gifted students normally have high emotions. They are very sensitive to so many different issues. If we are aware of that, we can actually provide better services again. Advocacy, we can advocate for students who are gifted. We can look for resources and try to find the ways that we can help them. What else? Finally, I feel like it's all the same. It's just trying to find or addressing the individual needs of each one of the students. In this case, of the gifted, who are the ones who may have needs that we were not aware of. Those are some of the reasons why you teachers should know about giftedness in your planet.